Welcome to the Tuesday. Okay.
Use your gavel,
Welcome
Mayor.
to the Tuesday, May 5th, 2015 meeting of Hot Springs Board of Directors. Tonight our invocation will be led by Pastor Ben Wiles, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand with me?
Let's pray. Father, I come to you today in the name that is above all names, Jesus Christ, Savior and King. In Scripture, in Paul's first letter to Timothy, Paul writes, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. In another place, the same writer instructs the church at Rome to be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which you have established. In the spirit of these admonitions, I come today representing your kingdom and asking you to grant these leaders wisdom in all matters that come before them. I thank you for the natural beauty and resources that they, as our leaders, have been called by you to steward. And I recognize that they face difficult challenges. Guide them in their decision-making this evening so that the citizens of our city may live, as the Apostle Paul said, peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. I thank you that you love the people that call this great city their home. I know your will for all of the people of Hot Springs is good and perfect and acceptable. So now, as our Savior taught us to pray, I say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bill, turn the air on.
I hereby call this meeting to order. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Davidson.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Ramick. Here. Foley.
Here.
Carney.
Here. Okay. The first item of business is to consider the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda, including items, if any, to be removed from the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor, in consideration for the crowd here, I was wondering if we could move item number 24 under new business to the first item of new business.
Second for that.
Second.
Can I have discussion with that? We have a motion and a second. My only concern is that those that are here for little things like rezoning will have to wait till the end of this to have their business taken care of, whereas they could go ahead and leave after their item is taken care of. There's only a few.
Well, what I would propose to do, of course, you've got a motion here, but
Yeah,
I
I
would
know.
propose that we move 24 up to be 22. And that way we can hear the appeal first, under new business.
We have a 20. Oh, that's
And
not
under
it.
new business,
21 is the first one under new business,
yeah.
water and sewer connection. I don't know, it's discussion. What do you think? Do you think they should wait till the whole thing's over?
I mean, I think we have a much bigger crowd that needs to be addressed first, so that's my reason for making the motion.
Okay.
My logic is those people are going to have to wait a long time for the other ones. Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the item up. Would you call the roll?
Yes. Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
No.
Ramick.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Carney.
No. It will be
Motion
moved
stands.
up, so the rest of you have to wait if you were going to leave early. Okay? Now we have an amendment to, may I please have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
I so move, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the agenda as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? No. Okay. Motion is adopted. The second item of business is to consider the approval of the minutes of the board meeting, which was held on April 21st. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or modifications to the minutes of that meeting?
Madam Mayor, I move for approval of the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? It is accepted. Okay. I want you to listen real closely, because this is what we're going to have to do tonight in an effort to afford everyone an equal and orderly opportunity to address the items on tonight's agenda. I want to remind each of our citizens and guests that we adhere to a 3-minute limit on your comments. For your convenience, we will display a clock timer on the monitors above. And out of respect to all of us, we ask that you honor this request. And while members of the board may have questions of the speakers, I ask that any general comments be reserved for the board discussion after all the speakers have been heard. We also ask that all cell phones be silenced, and please refrain from any disturbance in the meeting. Please don't talk to each other. Don't discuss what's going on, because that distracts from hearing what is actually being said. We ask that you please listen quietly. And should you need to leave prior to the conclusion of the meeting, we ask that you do so quietly without talking as you leave, because we do have several other items on the agenda to complete after this item is over. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for your concern for our community, our city, and for the issues that affect your lives. And thank you each one for coming out tonight. And we will, at this time, recognize guests. Do we have any guests to be recognized? I have one. All of you are guests. I'm sorry. Thank you for being here, all of you. But I do have a proclamation, and that's what we mean usually when we say guest. It's Kids to the Park Day proclamation. Let's see. All pretty and blue. Okay. This is through the Parks Department. Whereas May 16th, 2015 is the 5th Kids to Park Day organized and launched by the National Park Trust, and whereas Kids to Park Day empowers kids and encourages family to get outdoors and visit America's parks and park, whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks because of the decline in attendance over the last decades, and whereas we shall encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and hypercholesterolemia. And whereas Kids to the Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants, and whereas Kids to the Park Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors, now, therefore, I, Ruth Carney, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, do proclaim May 16th, 2015 as Kids to the Park Day in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and urge all residents of Hot Springs to make time on May 16th to take the children in your lives to the neighborhood, state, or national park, in witness whereof I have hereto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed on this 5th day of May in the year of our Lord, 2015. Would you please come forward and I'll present. No, that's okay. We want to get a picture of you, probably.
I can't pull it up.
And okay.
Thank you.
My name is Ann Hare. I've served on the Parks and Trails Committee, it's called now, for a number of years. I'll leave that there.
I'm Kay Eakey. I'm the chair of the Parks and Trails Committee, and a lot of what the Kids to Parks Day is about was already mentioned in the proclamation. As you said, we're celebrating it on May the 16th. The National Park Trust is a nonprofit organization that its purpose is to preserve parks and encourage outdoor activities. And we're going to do that by introducing families to geocaching on May the 16th at Energy Park from 9 till noon, something they can do year-round, and we hope everybody will come out.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank both of you for coming. I had a little note down here that Kay Eakey is retired special ed teacher and school administrator, and that she has been geo-coaching for 6 years. Geocaching. I think it's spelled wrong. And is a 30-year resident of our city. And she also said that you're currently the most active volunteer on the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee. Thank you so much. Okay. Do we have any other guests that we need to recognize?
Madam Mayor, I think protocol dictates that we recognize the elected representatives that we have here. Would all of you stand up, please? Our state officials and our county officials, would you please stand up and be recognized and express our appreciation for you coming out tonight? Thank you.
Yes, I overlooked that because I greeted you personally, and it's just like, thank you for being here. Appreciate that. We will now hear our city manager's report.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Kind of following along with the parks. This week we're celebrating the arts. It's called Arts in the Park, and it started back on Friday. And if you had a chance to go by Mother Nature, which is in front of the Arlington Hotel, you'll notice that not only did we rededicate that, but the Parks Department, working with the sculptor Lung Hua Shu, have put back the original vapors that are now kind of emanating from the pool to give it the Valley of the Vapors look and feel. This weekend was followed with a studio tour of probably 20 some odd studios that are in Garland County. And I think one thing that I think needs to be noted is we have some excellent artists in Garland County and the city of Hot Springs that really bring a lot of attention and culture to this community. This week we'll have various events. This is being handled by the Cultural Arts Alliance. Our own Director Davidson's a member of that group. And we'll have a lot of music, poetry, reading during the week. And then it all culminates on Saturday with the Art Fest. And Art Fest is going to be a great opportunity to see some especially gifted artists. The A&P is bringing in a speed painter from Dallas who is nationally renowned, who will be over at the convention center at 6:30. There will be a blind painter coming here that I understand is just incredible. And so we really encourage all of you to come. It's a community-wide celebration. We're celebrating downtown and the arts and the community. And I would really ask that you all consider that because it's a way to bring the community together. So that's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we have directors. Do you have any announcements concerning upcoming events? Yes, ma'am.
Well, he stole my thunder, but that's fine. I could remember all of them anyway. Arts in the Park, you see it around. Nearly all of the events are free, with the exception of celebrating the producers, the people who helped pay for a lot of this. And that event is Thursday night at Mid-America Science Museum. And I think the tickets are $25, and the Muses and some other musicians will be performing. And then there will be several artists participating. I think one of our own directors is participating in the Great Avenue Barbecue Cook-Off this Saturday at 315 Park Avenue. It's in the parking lot beside Tower of Strength. And so Mr. Ramick will have his culinary expertise presented.
The Ray Brothers.
The what?
Ray Brothers.
Ray Brothers, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, do any of the rest of you have one?
Well,
Upcoming event?
just to comment, I see Drew Terry at the back of the room. She attends all our meetings. Do you have a seat, or are you Lynch?
No, I'm gonna call her up right now. Yes.
Well, I just, Miss Terry attends all our meetings, and it pains me that she doesn't have a seat.
She's
And I
sitting
think
on a
that some
table.
gentleman ought to give her her
Yeah.
seat.
But before she sits down in that seat that's been provided, I'll give her mine.
That seat's hot though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Will you bring her up to the microphone real fast, because she has an upcoming event that she would like to announce, and she has been here and not missed a meeting for what, 18 years now? Is it 18 years?
Vote on my 19th year.
19 years, and she is the one who provides someone to pray for every one of our meetings, and she's probably the most faithful person in this government here. So thank you, Drew. You have an
Because I love my
announcement,
city.
upcoming event,
Thank
right?
you. You know, in 1952, and I know that most of you here weren't even here in 1952, but Harry Truman put into motion a law that says that the first Thursday in May is National Prayer Day. And so I wanted to remind everybody that this Thursday is the first Thursday of May, and it is the National Day of Prayer, and there will be a prayer time between 11 and 1 at the First Nazarene Church. And then if you can't attend that, we even have a night one, which will be at Trinity Church from 7 to 9. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We love you. That was cool.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
When I first came to Hot Springs, when I first got on the board, she called me and told me she wanted me to read some chapters from Ephesians, and it was being held at the convention center at the front part. We didn't have the other part of it. And I read about 3 or 4, and then she come up to me and she says, "You're not done. I want you to read the whole chapter." And I says, "What?" But I did it for you, Drew.
That's good. She gets a lot of people to do
Oh,
things.
yes. Can't say no.
All right. Any other upcoming events? All right.
I forgot one, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
I should have known better. The Hot Springs Music Festival starts, the first performance is May 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Performances every day.
The next item of business is consideration of the consent agenda. Items in this section are of a routine nature and will be considered as one item of business without discussion. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Ramick.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye.
It's adopted.
It is adopted. Okay. The next item of business is to consider ordinance number 01516, and I will entertain a motion to suspend the rules of the 3 readings, but I would like to have the ordinance read in its entirety. Would I accept a motion?
Can I get a clarification on that?
Uh,
It's to suspend the rules, so we don't have 3 readings, but you would like it
The
to be read
ordinance.
one time.
In its entirety, because a lot of
Also
people
moved.
have not read it yet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the 3 readings and read the ordinance by its entirety. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Council, would you please read it?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 01516, an ordinance establishing an anti-discrimination policy for the City of Hot Springs and for other purposes. Whereas it is the policy of the City of Hot Springs not to discriminate in its employment and personnel practices because of a person's race, color, creed, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation. And whereas the city seeks to ensure that its employees with responsibility for contracting with vendors do not discriminate against vendors because of the race, color, creed, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation of the vendor's owners. And whereas the city seeks to ensure that its employees in providing city services to the public and public accommodations do not discriminate because of the race, color, creed, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation. And whereas the city seeks to encourage businesses and firms it does business with to adopt employment practices and make sales and provide services to the public without discrimination. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Directors of the City of Hot Springs adopts the following ordinance. Section 1, the City of Hot Springs shall not discriminate against vendors because of the race, color, creed, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation of the vendor's owners. All city departments, divisions, commissions, and offices that contract with vendors shall adopt a written policy that reflects such non-discrimination in contracting. Section 2, employees of the City of Hot Springs in providing city services to the public and public accommodations shall not discriminate because of race, color, creed, religion, sex, or national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information, political opinions, or affiliation. All city departments, divisions, commissions, and offices shall adopt a written policy that reflects such non-discrimination in providing city services. Section 3, all contracts providing goods and services to the City of Hot Springs shall contain a clause stating that the contracting party shall not discriminate on the basis of race, sex, color, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. All bid and proposal requests for such contracts from the City of Hot Springs shall include notification of such a clause and the requirement that it be agreed to and followed. That concludes a reading of the ordinance in its entirety. If you would now, Mayor, entertain a motion second to adopt so that we can have discussion, if any.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and a lot of people signed up. We did-
Madam Mayor, excuse me, may I make an amendment to that motion? Is it appropriate now?
No.
I would like to make a motion to amend the ordinance by adding Section 4, which would read, "This ordinance shall not be applicable to federal, state, and local governmental entities or their respective agencies, political subdivisions, or nonprofit organizations so designated by the Internal Revenue Service."
So does that mean it would just be for private business? Private?
It means that it will not apply to federal, state, county, any other political subdivisions, or any nonprofit organizations that are designated as not-for-profit by the IRS.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend with what he just said. Do you want to state that very clearly so that we will know what the amendment?
Can we read it again?
No, yeah, read it one more time.
Okay.
Because I was thinking.
Yeah. My motion is to add Section 4 to this ordinance that says this ordinance shall not be applicable to federal, state, and local governmental entities or their respective agencies, political subdivisions, or nonprofit organizations so designated by the Internal Revenue Service.
Okay,
So a political subdivision, for example, would be the county.
yeah,
I mean, the list goes on.
okay. We have an amendment, and we have a motion and a second. Yes, ma'am, a discussion?
What, question for Director Pauling? By the county, I assume that you're doing this to address the concerns that were raised by the county judge with regard to housing city prisoners at the new jail.
No, I am not.
Are you not?
I'm
Okay.
making this motion because, to my mind, this ordinance is about addressing the behavior of the city and no other entity. And since we are entrusted with public funds, I also at least am inclined to support the provision that says we'll do business with people who will not discriminate, so that we know that when we are stewarding the public funds, that they are going to agencies that do not discriminate. But this, my purpose in adding this is to make sure that we are not attempting to control or manage the behavior of any other governmental entity. I mean, the county is not responsible to the city. They're responsible to the state legislature, for example. And that's my reason. I don't think we ought to be intrusive with this.
Stated another way, though, this amendment would address the concerns he raised.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm assuming it would, but I really don't know. That was not my purpose. My purpose was to remove ourselves from being the overseer of behavior of any entity other than our own and the people that we do business with.
Okay, and I have a question on that too. Does that include private businesses that are out of state that we contract with, developers?
That's not listed here, no.
But that would include them in another county, state situation?
I don't
Or
understand
is
your
it just for
question,
local?
Mayor. I don't understand your question.
Okay, the number 3 says that the clause would be with any contracting party shall not discriminate on the basis, number 3, let me scroll it down.
But there wouldn't be a clause if they're exempted.
No, I'm saying, are we going to, just in your statement, you said we shouldn't overreach into other, it's just about our city. So how about those contractors that we contract with that are out of state, out of city? Will it affect their contract also?
It affects everybody that we do business with that is not a governmental entity.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Is that clear? Any other questions on that amendment?
I got you.
You got it? Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Williams.
Yes.
Ramick.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Carney.
No. Okay.
Motion
Before we have this, okay.
6-1.
The amendment passes. So Mayor, now there will be further discussion at the board's pleasure on the motion as amended.
Okay. And
As
Becca?
a sponsor, I would like to make a brief statement. Good evening, everyone. I want to introduce this very briefly and how it came to be, and then City Attorney Albright will continue with more in-depth legal explanation of what it is and what it is not. First, for anyone questioning the importance of a civil rights ordinance, they can look around the room and outside today. It's pretty amazing. For those watching this on TV or online, the City Hall chambers are standing room only tonight, and a lot of people are outside couldn't get in. Clearly, a lot of citizens think this is critical, and I thank everyone for coming out to speak to this effort. A lot of reporters and others have been asking me why I initiated this law, and here's the answer. See, I have gay friends. During the recent Arkansas legislative session, laws were passed specifically protecting discrimination against the LGBT community. And I tried to imagine, how would I feel? What if people intentionally passed laws to discriminate against me, not for anything that I'd done, not for any laws that I'd broken, but simply for who I was and who I loved? I got to tell you, that wounded my heart. And I knew it was time to do something about the request I'd had for this protection ever since I was elected about 3 years ago. So following other forward-thinking cities in the state who also want to protect all their citizens, I requested this ordinance. The law is fairly simple and very limited in scope, but it declares that the City of Hot Springs and those with whom it directly does business will not discriminate based on sexual orientation. It's a good step and showcases our city as one who leads the way in civil rights and civility. Purely and simply, this is the right thing to do. It's also very good for business, by the way, because a company considering coming here wants to be certain that their employees will be treated fairly and kindly. Young, fast-growing businesses demand this. The world's biggest private employer, Walmart, said that very thing. It's the same for tourists who want to visit a happy, vibrant place that genuinely welcomes everyone. Native Americans laid down their weapons and called this a neutral territory hundreds of years ago. Competing tribes came in peace to enjoy the waters. This spirit is in the DNA of Hot Springs, and it's in the souls of these folks who came here tonight and many others, asking simply to be treated equally, fairly, and with dignity. There's nothing radical about caring for our fellow human beings. So I'm asking the board members to please pass this ordinance and show the world that Hot Springs welcomes everyone. Discrimination against any segment of society is to the detriment of us all. Counselor.
Mayor, thank you. Since we've read the entire ordinance, I think we've explained what it is. This is an ordinance that essentially establishes a policy more in line with the personnel of the City of Hot Springs, how we are to deal with our personnel, how our personnel are to deal with the public, and yes, does extend into the areas in which we contract. The amendment that was posed by Director Foley and approved by the board certainly pares that down quite a bit to only those private sector businesses that we might do direct business with. And in those occasions, this ordinance would require compliance with a non-discrimination policy as stated in the ordinance. I know we have a lot of people at any point that the board may have questions of me. Obviously, I'm here, but that's really the nuts and bolts of it. This is not about marriage or the sanctity of marriage or anything of that sort. It has more to do with the way that we deal with our employees, our employee deals with the public, and how we will contract with individuals.
No criminal.
Yeah, good question, sure. There's no criminal provision associated with this. There's no fine or penalty. If one of our employees violates this policy, then they're subject to discipline, which might include termination. If there is a violation of the policy with respect to folks that we may be contracting with, then that's grounds for the termination of the contract. But certainly no fine, no request for imprisonment or anything of that nature.
Okay. All right, we have a lot of people signed up, and I was going to say we got confused on the sign-up sheet. So we're going to go back and forth from for and against, but we have some papers that were confused on the first part. So we'll start with Dr. Jack Sternberg.
Yes, thank you. It's good to see you. I am against this ordinance, but I want to start by saying that everyone should agree that discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is wrong and should not occur and not be tolerated. But having said that, why is it suddenly a necessity to have an anti-discrimination ordinance concerning how the City of Hot Springs and its employees interact with outside vendors? Why in the history of Hot Springs have we not had such an ordinance before, which would have included political or religious affiliation or opinions, race, color, sex, national origin, age, disability, or marital status? It was never there before. Weren't those groups important before? Why adding sexual orientation, gender identity, and genetic information now suddenly makes this a necessity and also an emergency? And if so important, why doesn't the Hot Springs Employee Manual include sexual orientation for hiring? Can anyone show a need? Has this been a problem? Maybe we'll hear about that. The potential ordinance, I believe, is poorly written. What is the definition of sexual orientation, gender identity, and what is genetic information, and how did this apply to vendor interaction? Along those lines, it also seems hypocritical that vendors and businesses have never before been required to show their policies prior to adding sexual orientation, but now this is suddenly a need. Why not in the past? Besides a vendor agreeing to abide by these rules in business transactions with Hot Springs, why will it also be necessary for these vendors to have these rules as part of their overall everyday policies when not interacting with Hot Springs? If they don't, will Hot Springs not do business with them? How will this new ordinance affect businesses who wish to move to Hot Springs or do business with Hot Springs? Will some vendors stop doing business with us? Will we have to find more expensive or less adequate businesses to deal with? Will contracts be broken in the middle of a contract for non-compliance? How will this be monitored and by whom? Will present-day non-compliant businesses be grandfathered in? And now, Randy, with Amendment 4, Why are private vendors now being allowed to have different rules than public vendors? What's good for the goose ought to be good for the gander, or it's not good for anyone. Why does big government feel the need to continually impose new rules on small businesses? Why is it acceptable for Hot Springs to have rules that are more expansive and more encompassing than those of the state of Arkansas? In summary, I feel that by the law of unintended consequences, this ordinance will cause many potential problems for Hot Springs and small businesses when no problem actually exists today. Therefore, I ask you to vote against this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jack. We have C.B. Baker.
Mayor, if we could have everybody give their name.
Okay, and yes, when you come forward for the records, go ahead. Give your name and address, please, for the record, so that we'll have that.
I'm C.B. Baker from St. Luke's Episcopal Church on Spring Street. I come to speak for this ordinance, and thank you for allowing me to do that. And let me just say, gee whiz, Director Clark, you stole my thunder. My opening statement was that although the language is very subtle, those of us among and supportive of the gay and lesbian and transgender community are not naive. We recognize that the intent of this legislation is to allow discrimination. And it does remind me, too, of times earlier in my life in different situations where people's civil rights were taken from them simply because they were who they were. And it wasn't right then, and it's not right now to allow that to happen. God created all humankind. And no matter the color of our skin, no matter who we love, no matter how God created our bodies, all of God's children deserve to be treated with respect, dignity, and equality. Right. And then I have read and I hear there's no need for this law because discrimination doesn't exist. I was able to read some communication that was given to some or maybe all the city directors, and it was full of discrimination about this subject matter. And it was ugly and mean. And there are people in this room and a few hundred outside. If we had the time, we'd be here all night if we allowed them to tell the stories of their personal experience with discrimination. And of course we don't. So I urge you to do the courageous thing. I urge you to do the right thing and vote yes on this ordinance.
May I ask you a question? The ones that you were talking about, was it our city government?
I'd have to have them speak for themselves. That would just be anecdotal on my part.
Okay, thank you.
I'll answer your question, Mayor.
Yes.
And I want to just say this for people in the room tonight, and I'm sure it's true of all the other directors. I probably had in the last 2 days 100 calls and 100 emails. Some of you probably contacted me or probably in the audience tonight. And yes, I felt like that there were a couple of those emails that were hurtful and threatening in tone. I can't remember who they are, but yes, I felt like some were hurtful and threatening and actually anti-Christian for people who claim to be Christians.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, 907 West St. Louis. Let me say, first of all, I applaud this body in trying to do the right thing and stop discrimination. However, it's an age-old problem that has not gone away, and it will not go away by legislation. This is something that's a heart issue. It's not a legal issue, and until you change the heart of an individual, you're not going to change the way they do things. I was in business for 30 years, and every company I worked for had an anti-discrimination policy within the handbook of each employee. I taught diversity training in several companies that I worked for, and encouraged people to treat each one with respect. In this particular ordinance, you're taking and encompassing everybody except one group of people, those with a moral conscience. And that's what this is all about to begin with. It goes back to what happened when somebody refused to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding, and it all blew up from there because somebody said it's my moral conscience not to do it. I just heard somebody outside a minute ago screaming, you've got the right to do business anywhere you want. And I agree. You have the right to do business. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, green, purple, or if you're gay or straight. You do have the right to go in a place of business. But we also do have a right to sell according to our conscience. I remember years ago, we used to have a sign above our cash register that said that I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. And what that meant was that if someone came in that was sexually harassing a 17-year-old cashier of mine, I had the right to tell them they couldn't come back to my store. If they had come into my store and they had stole from me on several occasions, I had the right to meet them at the door and say, you can't come back into my store. I had the right to tell somebody that if you want me to do something that's unethical, illegal, or is against company policy, that I could not do it. I had the right to refuse service. And what you're saying by this ordinance is I no longer have that right. I cannot deny somebody service because of my moral conscience. Every one of us have a moral conscience. It's either guided by the way we were raised, either biblically or in society. I apologize for the Christians that don't act like Christians. I apologize for politicians that don't act like politicians. Well, maybe not. But the truth of the matter is, this is an issue that stretches far beyond I think the realm of government into the pocket of the private industry. And we just did it with this Amendment 4. I just can't believe that. I mean, what you're saying is you're discriminating against even more because you're saying if you're another government entity, you have more rights than somebody in private business. Hey, if it weren't for private business, you wouldn't have taxes. If you didn't have taxes, you wouldn't be able to have the money to spend where you're spending it. Folks, I'm going to urge you to vote no. Vote no against this. It's a terrible law, terrible ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, Ann Hare?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I wanted you to know that my husband and I moved here in 1989, excuse me.
Oh, your address, please.
Oh, sorry, 106 Camelot Point in Hot Springs. We moved here 26 some odd years ago to start a business, K-Tech. Out in the industrial park, there's a street named after it. When our state legislature passed the law allowing discrimination against LGBT people, I thought it was ironic that legislators who have stated how much they hate the federal government's interference in state matters would pass a law forcing their will on municipalities in Arkansas. The mayor has asked whether we have discrimination. Well, in Arkansas, women are paid 77 cents for every dollar a man is paid for doing the same job. That's discrimination. I imagine that she herself has felt a little discrimination being placed in what some people call a man's job. Shall we go to our friends and neighbors and ask them whether they discriminated against someone today? We know that the answer would be no. Yet Saturday, I heard of a new restaurant on Central Avenue, open in Hot Springs, that has a sign saying that they reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Who do you think they're talking about refusing service to this time? Martin Niemöller, a German Lutheran pastor who was arrested by the Nazi Gestapo and was sent to Dachau in 1938, lived to be rescued by the Allies. He wrote the following, and I think some of us have heard this and we need to be reminded. In Germany, the Nazis first came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. I am not gay, but I wonder who will be next. Atheists? Unitarians? My sister lives in Indianapolis. There's been a firestorm there over the lost business in that city because of the discrimination that a discriminatory law that state passed. The state is forcing a very dangerous law upon us, and I urge you to make sure the city of Hot Springs does not discriminate.
Thank you. And I do want to make something very clear. The ones I've asked about that have been discriminated against. I want to know if we are doing that. Not that, I mean, there should be things filed if we are discriminating as a city. We should have, if you have grievance with that, it should be filed so that we know that. And that's why I've asked. I don't know of any discrimination because in our hiring, we do not discriminate. And I know that we hire gays, lesbians. It's never been a rule not to. So when I ask, where are you coming from and what is your discrimination, I'm talking about a vendor of our city or our city itself. And if you have been by them, you should file a grievance and we should know about it. It shouldn't go on. I am not for discrimination in any form, at any all of us are human beings, and I believe that all of us have rights, equal rights for housing and employment. And I just want to know if you've been so violated by our city, we need to know that. It should stop. That's why I said that. Okay, Robert, and I cannot read the last name. No, wait. I'm going back and forth. George Pritchett. George is probably outside. Would somebody call George? George Pritchett.
Go to the next one.
We'll wait. Okay. We'll go to the Robert, I can't read it, lives on 118 Keywood. Okay, and then when George comes in, let me know.
The name is Robert Van Hook.
Okay, I cannot read it, I'm sorry, I'll make that clear.
Honorable board members,
And your address.
my address is 118 Kenwood
Thank you.
here in Hot Springs. Last summer, I was walking on the sidewalk at one of our many wonderful outdoor events here in Hot Springs when I heard someone shout out, "Faggot." Now, I don't know where it came from. I don't know who it was aimed at because there were dozens of people around, and it could have been named at any of them. But this 75-year-old man, for a brief moment, felt fear, and I worried for my well-being. Yet I did nothing. And when I hear there are no instances of discrimination against gays, it's for the same reason. When you feel powerless and you feel there's no one to submit your problem to, you do nothing. I remember well how many people said during the 60s they knew nothing of racial injustice. They heard nothing for the same reason. People who did not feel empowered could not and would not express their frustration. People who don't have the experience of discrimination don't recognize it because it's not happening to them.
Right.
I'm glad there are people who don't feel discrimination, who don't feel injustice. But there are people who feel it and feel powerless to do anything about it, or they feel that they fear reprisals. Now, would this ordinance before the board have prevented someone from shouting out on the streets of Hot Springs, "Faggot"? No, it would not have prevented that. On the other hand, this ordinance sends the message that this is not Hot Springs. We respect and appreciate the diversity that makes Hot Springs the city that it is. Every person, no matter their age, their religion, their race, their human condition, their sex, their sexuality, all these things go together to make up this special city. And this ordinance can empower those who currently feel they have no voice. I urge the Board of Directors to pass this ordinance and show that the accepting spirit is indeed alive and well in Hot Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could refrain from response, if we will go faster, okay? Lloyd, is George here? Okay.
George Pritchett, 125 Carl Drive. Thank you, Board, for listening. I object to this ordinance. I don't object because I believe in discrimination. I object because this ordinance is fraught with error. I lived in Los Angeles when discrimination was rampant in the 60s against gays, also against blacks, and against any number of other groups. We're going to have an ordinance here that's going to be difficult to enforce. Discrimination is very difficult. I don't discriminate to renters. I don't discriminate on color, race, sex, or any other reason. I have gay friends. I have bisexual friends. I have lesbian friends, and I support each and every one in their right to everything that I have. I don't think we should make any special protections for any group. This is also going to create some contracting problems with the vendors. Ultimately, I can see this flowing down to you could lose your polling places for an election because churches are probably not going to sign a contract with the city agreeing to follow this ordinance, your requirement. They don't discriminate now. They welcome all these people into their church. They will continue to welcome them in there. They welcome them every Sunday. And those that come into the church are treated just like everybody else. I think that when we walk down the street, we treat people the same way. I do not see discrimination in our city against any group, certainly based on sex or gender or sexual preference. I don't even understand the difference in this ordinance. It says sex and then it says gender. One of them is an act, I guess. Maybe that's what you're talking about. But I thought it was about males and females. I also see problems with going into bathrooms. I mean, I had an experience where a man went into the woman's bathroom and a woman screamed loudly and fell over and fainted. That's wrong. You know, she didn't expect that. She had the right to expect women in the women's bathroom and men in the men's bathroom. Now, this law doesn't say that it's open season, but that's what this law is going to end to. Now, lastly, the thing that concerns me most of all is we always have an issue with money in this city. We're going to have a referendum if this passes. We'll be just exactly like Fayetteville. It'll get on the ballot. The city will spend a lot of money. I suspect that it will be overturned. Why do we want to do that? I believe we should treat everyone fairly, equally, welcome into all of our circles. I don't think we should discriminate against anyone. I don't think we are. I play on a pool league. We have a mix of people that's unbelievable. We don't turn anybody away. I see people dressed differently, but I don't know what that means. Mr. McCabe used to make fun of my legs, and I do too. But anyway, we just don't discriminate. This city is not full of discrimination. Let's welcome everybody, but we don't need another law to go in the books to tell people how to behave. We know how to behave. We're adults, God-fearing people, and we respect everyone. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey, George, you were outside and there was amendment made to the ordinance that Mr. Foley presented. Mr. Foley, would you tell him? You can say it better than I did,
Please,
so George
thank
will
you.
know.
Happy to. The amendment reads, this is a new section 4, this ordinance shall not be applicable to federal, state, and local governmental entities or their respective agencies, political subdivisions, or not-profit organizations so designated by the Internal Revenue Service. And we had some discussion as to why I did that, so.
I appreciate that. I just wonder why, if it's not suitable for those agencies, why it would be suitable for the general public.
They're already covered. And I don't feel like we ought to be in the role of trying to mandate, for example, just to the county, their behavior. They're responsible to the state legislature. Okay.
I thank you for that explanation. I might point out one last thing, and that is that as a realtor, we have all kind of laws in there. Mr. Ramick can comment on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have, go back one. Okay, Betty Hightower, with your name and address, please.
I am
I'm Betty Hightower, 210 Beachview Circle. I'm a retired Lakeside school administrator, and I really appreciate you all considering this non-discrimination ordinance tonight. I will read because I read a lot faster than I talk, as you can probably tell. City Director Becca Clark has been a champion for basic human rights by bringing forward this issue. Passing a non-discrimination ordinance in Hot Springs for city employees is critical for all Arkansans. Passing this ordinance will send a message far and wide that Hot Springs values fairness and equality. This ordinance is about striking a balance. We can give every city worker an equal opportunity to earn a living and hold vendors with the city to the same professional standards. All hardworking city employees in Hot Springs should have the chance to earn a living and provide for their families without a fear of being fired for reasons that have nothing to do with their job performance. The purpose of a non-discrimination ordinance is to protect and safeguard the rights and opportunity of all persons to be free of discrimination. Discrimination is a very real problem for LGBT Arkansans. According to a recent survey of LGBT people in Arkansas, 25% of the respondents reported experiencing employment discrimination, and 37% have experienced harassment at work. Non-discrimination laws do not create special rights for certain Arkansans and not others. The right to work is not a special right, and that's why we already have civil rights laws protecting against forms of discrimination at the federal law. An inclusive non-discrimination law simply puts all city employees in Hot Springs on equal footing. A recent decision by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission forbids gender identity discrimination in federal employment. 29 states do not prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and 32 do not prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity. Hot Springs will join other cities like Conway, Little Rock, North Little Rock to offer protection for city employees and their contractors based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This is a common sense solution. Okay, I got to say one thing. Thank you for considering an ordinance that causes no harm but can help one or many. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Driggers.
I am Bob Driggers, number 3 Stonegate. As you know, I'm with the Garland Good Government Group, and I must inform you that we oppose unnecessary laws and taxes. Federal law already provides non-discrimination protection against anyone based on race, color, creed, religion, age, disability, marital status, and sexual orientation. Your ordinance proposes unnecessary duplication, plus adds gender identity, genetic information, and political opinions or affiliations. I, and likely most people, don't even know what these last 3 mean. I think the gender identity may apply to Bruce Jenner, but I'm not certain. So unless Bruce is moving to Hot Springs, that is unnecessary. Genetic information is very vague and may qualify as TMI, too much information. If we outlaw political opinions and affiliations, then we reject George Soros. That means we're outlawing numerous pharmaceutical companies, UPS, MasterCard, FedEx, Hewlett-Packard, Wells Fargo, Best Buy, Wendy's, Whole Foods, Raytheon, Tootsie Rolls, and anyone else that uses his hedge funds. If we reject Koch brothers based on their political opinions, We outlaw Georgia Pacific, Coke Industries, Stainmaster, Bronny, Dixie, Sparkle, Coke, Pipeline, Ag and Energy, Chemicals, Minerals, Trading, and Cattle Companies. Heck, we can't even allow the Clinton Foundation to develop their property on Lake Hamilton. They have political affiliations. How about the impact on Christian companies such as Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby? How about the impact on the FLW Bass Tournament that brings $3 million a year to Hot Springs? Why would these fishermen and many other of us good old boy rednecks take a chance on contracting or holding events at the convention center? That could include gun shows, motorcycle events, and other outdoor-related groups that bring money to our town. I've seen letters and emails from local businesses who say they may leave town. So have you, Ms. Clark. Some were sent to you. The potential impact on economic development could be devastating. Except for hotels and banks, our reputation for being anti-business is already bad enough. For example, what happened to Bass Pro Shops, Sissy's Log Cabins, Logan Roadhouse, and now even Walmart. Let's not exacerbate the problem by passing this unnecessary ordinance. What were you thinking, Ms. Clark? And where is your business, Little Rock or Hot Springs?
I object to the tone of Mr. Driggers' remarks. Ms. Clark is a lifelong friend of mine, well, 35 plus years, and her business is in Hot Springs, and her heart's in Hot Springs, and you owe her an apology.
Okay, Mickey Gates.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. The last speaker, I thought, misinformed the public by implicating that this ordinance in fact discriminated against people because of their political affiliation. It is just the opposite of that, so I don't know how he's reading this. This is that it prohibits discrimination based on political affiliation or leanings. And so for the record, I want that said straight. In fact, most of his examples were inappropriate because they were misread and for sure misrepresented.
Okay. And it is included. Mickey, let's wait 1 second. We need to go for 4. It was a lot of people have read the ordinance wrongly, and because we're not really overreaching into other things, but it is not, it says that we will not discriminate against political affiliations, so they would not be discriminated against. You want to make that clear?
Right.
Just that part of it, read it.
It states that there will be no discrimination on political opinions or affiliations or religious viewpoints or any of the sort, which
Yeah.
all fall under the First Amendment anyway.
Okay, and we'll go for Emmett Hill.
I'm Emmett Hill, and I live at 815 Quapaw. Basically, a lot of what I've been hearing is saying discrimination is bad. Everyone knows that in this room. No one likes discrimination. We can make that clear. But the thing I don't get is why you would be objected to the bill if you do not discriminate, if you do not have discriminatory practices, or you do not employ people based on practices that discriminate. This bill won't affect you. If you don't discriminate against people based on employment, it won't affect you. And this bill is made on a scale that's going to be enacted by the government. Now, I understand if private businesses do not wish to have their practices monitored. That is their right. But as a government or a governing body, isn't it the job of the government to remain unbiased, civil, and not enact on this? And the thing is, this isn't private people not having the right to have their own political beliefs. This is the job of the government to remain fair and to not encourage discrimination. And while we won't stop it on a worldwide scale, or we won't stop people yelling faggot in the streets, we will set an example that as a city of Hot Springs, we do not allow, encourage, or conform to discrimination in any way, shape, form, or fashion, including the LGBT community, but in any facet. And that pretty much covers it. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Mickey Gates.
Thank you. My name is Mickey Gates. I live at 365 Herman Trail. I'm State Representative District 22, which represents part of Hot Springs. Sunny die is the Latin word meaning without day. It's a legal term many state legislators use to define the last day of session. In Arkansas, it also denotes the start of a 90-day clock in which bills approved in both chambers and signed by the government go into effect, tick-tock. And if every contract with the city requires the other party to have an additional clause to protect everyone's preferred lifestyle that goes beyond the federal and the state definition, how will the city of Hot Springs be able to renew their contracts for the math and science and the contract with Garland County without the exception of the exclusion clause of, I think that was number 4, that allows the city and the state to have their laws as they are? I don't see Garland County willing to amend theirs, and I can know for sure, at least right now for the next several years, that the state of Arkansas would not comply. Sunny dime without day, you have rushed to beat this 90-day clock. And if you pass this ordinance tonight, you will have beaten that 90 days in which it would have been illegal for you to pass this ordinance. Senate Bill 202 is the enabling legislation that would prevent you from passing this ordinance after July the 21st of 2015. Directors, have you read this bill? Do you know what the law is? If you didn't, here is a news flash. With Governor Hutchison's signature, SB 202 became Act 137. Act 137 becomes law July the 21st, and paragraph 14-1-1403 states, a county, municipality, or other political subdivision of the state shall not adopt nor enforce an ordinance, resolution, rule, or policy that creates a protected classification or prohibits discrimination on a basis not contained in state law. So what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Even though you have pushed, rushed, forced, and crammed this ordinance through, as of July the 21st, it will not be enforceable by the city of Hot Springs. So the window is from when your laws become laws after passage, if you pass it tonight, until July the 21st is your window. You can ask your own attorney about Act 137, whether or not you will be able to enforce this ordinance past the July 21st deadline, and I would entertain any questions. I will say the Attorney General's office today confirmed the interpretation of that.
Okay.
Yield any questions?
I have a question. Did you say the governor approved this?
No, on Senate Bill 202, that is now Act 137.
He didn't sign it. You know why he didn't sign it? You're a Republican. You all are Republicans. We have a Republican governor now. He didn't sign this legislation that you voted for. Why did he not sign it?
I think I was there when he signed it.
I have the bill in front of me.
Was it not signed?
He did not. He did not
Okay, it was
sign
5
the bill.
days, but it will become law
It'll
90
become
days
law
after
without his
Sunny died.
signature. You know that from our good old days back in
Well,
Garland
it
County.
will become law 90
But he
days
didn't
after
sign
Sunny
it.
died.
I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, it becomes law 90 days
And I
after
just
Sunny
had
died.
a concern as to why a Republican governor with a Republican-controlled legislature wouldn't sign this bill.
Well, I do know that it came
I know
out.
you can't speak for the governor.
You're right, I can't, but I can't do that. I can barely speak for myself. I will say that out of the House, there were only 21 nays out of 100, and there were only 8 nays out of the Senate. So it passed both chambers with flying colors. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions, anybody, about that? Okay. Pam Greenway.
Hi, I'm Pam Greenway, 130 Wildwood Forest Road, Hot Springs. I would like to address those folks who say, well, if the LGBT community is being discriminated against, if there's someone being discriminated against at their job, why don't they simply step forward in their job and speak up and say, I'm being discriminated against? Well, I tell you why. Unless you are independently wealthy enough to go on to something different, if you speak up against what's being done to you, you are going to face repercussions. I think any of us who don't think that's possible is living in a world that would be nice to live in, but we simply don't live there yet.
Thank you. I would like to add one protected class to this ordinance, and that's white female mayors, because and talk about discrimination and hateful, mean words and blogs and Arkansas Times and all kinds of Facebook, and I can't do one thing about it because I'm a white female mayor. And I understand what it feels like to be totally bashed and chewed up and spit out by people in this room. Okay, Lloyd Hoffman. Okay, we'll go on to the next. We have several. Okay, we have a problem here. We have two Alan Clarks.
There are two different Alan Clarks.
I know
There's
that.
the Republican Alan Clark and the Democrat Alan Clark.
I am very well. I'm trying to see who signed up next.
One of them's G. Allen.
Okay, let's see who's on this other side here. Okay. Okay, Marcia Blackwelder. Who did I call this outside? I forgot already.
Alan Clark? No, from outside.
From outside. Who did I call from outside?
Good evening, Marcia Blackwelder, 701 Prospect, Hot Springs National Park. I was unfortunately outside, and I was the person that they cut off from stopping to come in, the last person on the list. So I may have missed probably some of the things that you have considered so far. According to Judge Rick Davis, this is trivial stuff, as quoted in the Sentinel Record of Thursday, April 30th, 2015. And in fairness to Judge Davis, I will read the entire sentence and quote from him in which he characterizes this anti-discrimination ordinance as trivial stuff. Quote, "I've got enough things to deal with besides adding more trivial stuff into the deal," end quote. When did discrimination become trivial stuff? Especially in light of the Wright Institute, especially in light of the Wright Institute comprehensive and exhaustive report presented at a 2009 U.S. House hearing, which found, and I quote, "over 40% of the almost 400 examples of discrimination against state and local employees involves law enforcement and corrections officers." Judge Davis's comment shows us all exactly why we need this ordinance. My comment to those opposed to this ordinance is you can still hate, you can still discriminate, but not on the taxpayer dime. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Lloyd Hoffman back in, right? Your name and address.
Lloyd Hoffman, 107 Gray Circle, Hot Springs. I have a little booklet here I brought along, written by a pastor, Dr. Robert Jeffress of the First Baptist Church in Dallas. It's called Countdown to the Apocalypse, and there's a section in there on page 72, and it mentions this situation that happened not too long back down in the city of Houston, in which 5 pastors there were required by subpoena to submit their sermons to the city by the lesbian mayor under the city's non-discrimination law. Now, that's just a good example of something that a lot of us Christians are very concerned about. We think that there'll be a lot more to lose as far as religious freedoms go, potentially, by passing something like this. And a lot of people might say, well, we'll write it up so that nothing like that could happen. But the book goes on to give example after example of all kinds of incidents that have happened all across the United States. And it's amazing how creative the other side is in challenging religious freedoms. And so it's already happened. It's on page 72 and 73 and 74. I won't try to go through the whole thing. But anyway, clearly, this really would be quite a detriment, I think, to the religious community here. And so I'm asking y'all to please vote no on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Susan Jennings. Is she outside? Okay.
I think both Clarks are in the room now.
I know. Alan Clark, 4. That's you. We have to balance this out. I'll call the other Alan.
I'll go first. Thank you for having us. First of all, the membership of the
Wait. Name it.
Alan Clark,
and
402
address.
Oakwood,
There you go.
Hot Springs.
Thank you.
The membership of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Hot Springs unanimously passed a resolution expressing our support for the passage of this ordinance. Currently, the LGBT citizens of Hot Springs do not share the civil protections others in our society enjoy and demand as their right. The Unitarian Universalist churches share 7 guiding principles, the first of which is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The second is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Your own board mission statement includes valuing and nurturing diversity of people and viewpoints. We want Hot Springs City Government to embody these ideals and protect the rights of all the citizens and visitors to the city. It is good for our citizens and good for business as well. In the past, Hot Springs has enjoyed the reputation of an accepting, welcoming, and progressive community. We want to maintain that reputation. It is ethically and morally the right thing to do, and we urge immediate passage of the ordinance being considered. Personally, now this is not from the church, I personally know that a positive vote is the right thing to do ethically, morally, and even economically for this community. I know people say you cannot legislate social change, but keep in mind that in the recent past, if a popular vote had been taken on desegregation, it would have been overwhelmingly defeated. The LGBT community will be saddened, discouraged, and angry if they receive another slap in the face from good people who don't have the courage of their convictions. This is not just a can of worms. The federal government does not include LGBT as a protected class unless, if you're lucky enough to be a federal employee, a retiree, or working for a company that has a federal contract or applying for federal benefits, then you are covered. Otherwise, you are not. The citizens of Arkansas do not have these protections at this time. In Arkansas, you can fire just for being gay. You can be evicted just for being gay. Most people are shocked when they hear this because the American people on the whole support equal rights for all. In about half the states, this is the case. And that is exactly why so many cities and counties have taken the action being considered tonight. Please do the right thing and vote for the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll wait on the other one I call and go for the other Alan Clark just to keep this balanced.
We'll see how far I get.
Okay.
Alan Clark, 958 McClendon. I thank each of you for serving, your time commitment, and your passion for serving your community. Whether we agree or disagree, I have no doubt your heart is in the right place. I hate it that in some of the comments that have been made about the Religious Freedom Act tonight by some of you, that you have not made that same allowance for me. If the city of Hot Springs has been discriminating, shame on you. Stop it. I have never knowingly, unfairly discriminated against anyone. I don't think anyone who has done business with me or my family would say otherwise. With Amendment 4, the record shows that in presenting Amendment 4, Director Foley said, we do not want to be intrusive. I don't feel like we should try to mandate. That's nice. We don't want to be intrusive to government, but it's okay to be intrusive to me as a small businessman. Discrimination against me is a mom and pop business, but not government, and it won't affect big business. Sections 1 and 2 say you will not discriminate for political opinion, yet discrimination for political opinion is exactly what Section 3 does. It will not really affect a vendor's behavior, only attempt to regulate their political opinion. There are those that argue that there is a lot of LGBT discrimination. I am sure there is some. I have city council meetings in my district where there are city directors who refuse to not only shake my hand, but even to look at me. Why? Because I'm a Republican, but I'm not asking for a law. I am being discriminated against in other ways, and by the LGBT community. I'm listed on a website put up by the LGBT community as a person in business who discriminates. Because I have ever discriminated? In fact, there are only 2 businesses in the state listed by the LGBT community and they ought to know. I'm listed because I was one of 33 state senators, all but one, who voted for a law that says that those who have never discriminated against anyone cannot be put out of business for not participating in an event they do not agree with. To the comment about Republicans passing the bill, on the Senate end, the final version was voted for by all but one Democrat. If we truly want to help someone, let's deal with the group that are truly being discriminated against. Let's do something about convicted felons in the provision. The question is, does your ordinance seek to eliminate the mistreatment of the LGBT community? If so, most of us are not doing that. If it is about recognizing and participating in gay marriage, I cannot go along and my bids won't be accepted because I won't sign your pledge. You're actually outlawing Christianity. As a son of a pastor, undenominational, I've been in almost every church. The writings of Paul on grace, you almost all agree with. Please don't hold it against me because I'm consistent in that I believe the rest of his writings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, back to Susan Jennings. Oh, she's not here? Okay.
Go to bed.
Okay, let's go to Rick Warnharder. Is he inside or outside? Rick Ward Harder.
He must not be here.
I've got something.
While we're waiting, I'm not sure the spelling of the last name. It's Lloyd, and it's not Hoffman. It's H-E... That one. Helling? Lloyd Helling? H-E-F-L-N-G? Okay, we won't go to that
He's in
one either.
District 5. Do you recognize that, Director Raymond?
Not from the way you're spouting a few letters here and there. I'm not.
H, well, I don't know what it is. It looks like H,
Is there an address with it?
nope.
It only says District
5.
Go to the
Okay, we'll just wait on,
Ask for Lloyd H. out there, from District 5.
We can be on that
well, that's
next
okay. I was
verse.
just going to do that in case he was in here while we're waiting on Reverend Rick Ward Harder. Is he coming yet? There he is. You're up. Uh-oh.
That's a preacher.
And you, would you state your name and address?
Thank you. I'm Rick Ward Harder, 129 Enterprise, Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm the Reverend Dr. Rick Ward Harder, or Father Rick. I stand before you today as a citizen of this city and in the ecclesiastical role of the canon to the Archbishop Mansell Gilmore of the Progressive Episcopal Conference and representing the Diocese of the Delta and all of the clergy therein. Many tonight have spoken based on civil arguments. I'm speaking on a faith-based perspective. My faith demands that I support equality for all persons. This council is comprised of Christians ranging from Nazarene to United Methodist and others. I know many of you have heard from members of the Christian community in opposition to extending equality to all citizens. I must remind the board and the Christians thereon that this is not a religious moral issue, but is a secular issue. Bullying, blatant discrimination, and bigotry based on religious moral beliefs is wrong and does not reflect the Spirit of Christ or the message that he taught. In fact, he stood against the theocratic government of the day and embraced those who were oppressed and marginalized. I would remind the council today that religious morality was used to support slavery, prohibition, to oppose women's suffrage, to inflict Jewish persecution, to oppose interracial marriage, and ultimately civil rights. While we live in a progressive civilized society, some, such as racial and gender equality, have seen some progress, but we still have a long ways to go. The same is true of the protections of my lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered brothers and sisters. Christ did not push, legislate, or demand that anyone followed him. He attracted followers by exhibiting love, grace, mercy, and peace. Christ called whosoever will. He made it clear that he welcomed all to his table. The persons that the theocratic government of the day saw as undesirable or unclean, he fellowshipped with. He did not give us the right to impose moral judgments on others. This is a civil matter, and the city of Hot Springs, as the 5th largest city in Arkansas, needs to stand with Little Rock and Eureka Springs as a leader on the right side of history. We need to call whosoever will to the business table and to the employment table. It is time to set religious differences aside, to coexist, and to welcome all to our city for the purposes of business and employment. If you are voting your religious conscience tonight, or the conscience of your constituents, then it must be a vote of approval of this ordinance. Anything less than that is unchristlike, as a vote of no is clear statement that you believe that it is acceptable to discriminate and that you embrace bigotry, which is in direct opposition to the teachings of Christ. There is no other explanation you can offer for a no vote tonight. My faith demands that I stand for equality and to embrace all persons regardless of their faith or non-faith posture. I leave you with a quote from Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with God? Thank you.
Thank you.
And the preaching.
Okay, I am going to call David Pate.
How you doing? My name is David Pate from 431 Brooks Loop, and I'm asking that you vote no on this ordinance. And I object on this ordinance because it itself is discriminating. This ordinance will be asking some business owners and city employees to violate their rights of conscience or not have a job with the city. Hot Springs is not a city that bullies people. That is not what we do. And this ordinance, while it may not be its intent, will in effect bully a group with its passing. The message that is being sent here is agree with this ordinance or face the consequences and not have a job. Hot Springs needs to be a city that welcomes all businesses, whether it be businesses of faith with their personal convictions, and not turn away businesses that have religious convictions. The bill itself says that it does not discriminate against religion, and yet what it will do against certain groups is discriminate on the basis of religion. Basically, what it's saying is, if you disagree with this, if you won't sign what the city is asking you to sign, if you don't violate your rights of conscience, then we will not do business with you. And that is the message that this bill has. That in and of itself is bullying and discrimination. And I don't know, obviously, if each and every board member is truly listening tonight, or if those already have their convictions and have made up their mind. But my hope is that you have really listened to constituents who have made phone calls and emails over the past week. That is my hope and my prayer. And obviously, with the things that have been passed in our state legislature, this ordinance is out of touch with Arkansas as a whole, which is why it is being passed before July. And I want to encourage you, after people who have come from out of town to be here for this, after they leave, the citizens from Hot Springs who have made phone calls and who have made emails will still be here living in these neighborhoods. Thanks for hearing me on this matter, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Mayor, before you ask, the officers over here, you have the only list, and to expedite things.
I have the only list.
Yes, well, they were wanting to try to line up people who may be outside
Yep.
and have them ready at the door, so we wouldn't have some of these, I don't know how many more speakers we have.
Okay, the thing is, I go back and forth.
I know,
and they're
I know,
all
but-
out of order. So people have signed up.
Well,
Let me see.
if you could just maybe announce the names you have, and
Okay.
we could make just a short list and give
Almost
it to
through.
them. And then they would,
That's going to take up too much time.
Okay. Well, there are only about 3 or 4 more.
we only got 3 or 4 more?
Betsy Baker, is she inside? Okay, she's inside. Okay. Uh-huh. She had to leave? Okay. So we're coming right down. Did we find out who the Lloyd H. is from District 5?
He probably went
No?
to bed too.
Okay. Then we are, there's no more. Okay, just a second. We got signed up. Against, Randy Hill.
Friend.
That's it. On that side. On that side. We got more.
My name is Randy Hill. I live at 815 Quapaw, and I'd like to clarify that I'm for this amendment. I applaud the courage of our city directors to bring this forward. What side of history do we want to be on? What side of history do we want to be on? We want the people that are standing outside Central Hall yelling racial slurs as they walk in that school. Is that us? It's not. We need to be welcoming. People are suffering out there. It's easiest for me to stand here before you today as a heterosexual white male Protestant and say there's not a problem. I commend you for bringing this to our attention. You know, I hear a lot of excuses out there. Oh, we can't pass this. It's too complicated. It's not. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. How complicated is that? State legislator, get it right. That's why we're here tonight. If y'all had got it right, we wouldn't be here tonight. So I beg of you, I implore of you, do the right thing. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. This is a right to work state. I can walk in tomorrow and say, you're gay, you're fired. Is that right? No. It also means, though, there are certain things that you have to do. You can't dress inappropriately, come to my place of employment. I can fire you for that. That's proper, that's appropriate, that's a good thing. Let's just get together and let's all be human. Let's all do the right thing. That's all I ask. Let's not overthink this. Let's not complicate it. We will lose business if we are not welcoming to other people. There's a reason Walmart did not sign this, because they would lose business in Arkansas. There's a reason Asa Hutchinson probably passed on that legislation. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm a Christian. I love my community. I love my people in my community. I believe that everybody that lives in this community deserves the exact same rights to live, work, and die in this community. And on that basis, please, I beg of you, as a Christian, as a human, as someone cares about others, do the right thing. That's all. It's not that complicated. I appreciate your time.
Okay. We're going to click off down through here. We've got all on one side. It won't take long. Lori Rushing.
Miss Lady.
My name is Laurie Rushing. I'm Arkansas State Representative, District 26. I live at 134 Cannon Ridge Point. I will try to make this fast. I will read. I'm here to express my concerns regarding this ordinance. This proposed ordinance creates risk for the City of Hot Springs to be in violation of the United States federal anti-discrimination law. The following are considered protected classes by federal law: race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, pregnancy, familial status, disability status, veteran status, and genetic information. I feel the proposed ordinance is in violation of federal anti-discrimination laws, and I will explain. Let's start with Section 1, regarding the city discrimination against vendors. While this section adds non-federally protected classes, it does not cover 3 of the federally protected classes. Section 1 does not cover pregnancy, it does not cover veteran status, and it does not cover familial status. So to my count, we have a possibility of 3 violations just in Section 1. In regards to providing city services, again, it leaves out pregnancy, veterans, and familial status. I don't understand why the City of Hot Springs would feel it's okay to discriminate against a pregnant woman or a veteran on providing city services. So again, there are 3 of the federally protected classes excluded in this section. However, it is Section 3 that has my greatest concern, and this section encourages discrimination based on this ordinance. Section 3 of the ordinance intentionally leaves out the federally protected classes of religion and age, which are included in Sections 1 and 2. While some on the city board might say this ordinance was mirrored after the Little Rock City ordinance that recently passed, I would tend to disagree. In fact, the City of Little Rock did not eliminate these 2 federally protected classes from their section that references contracts with the city. Also, the City of Hot Springs would actually be violating their own ordinance in regards to Section 1 of this proposed ordinance. Section 1 states the City of Hot Springs shall not discriminate against vendors because of religion. However, Section 3 would require a vendor that has a contract providing goods and services to the City of Hot Springs to agree to adding the discrimination clause even if it is against their religious beliefs. Federal anti-discrimination laws were put in place to protect the citizens of this great country. While these actions of the City Board may appear on the surface to be extending the protections, they are in reality discriminating against the 2.9 million people in Arkansas, including the group they are trying to protect. In closing, I would ask the City Board to pull this ordinance from consideration due to the potential liability issues with the ordinance could cause the city. I would also ask that the board address the citizens of Hot Springs on why they felt it was necessary to discriminate in this ordinance in regards to age, religion, veterans, pregnancy, and familial status. I also want to say that SB 202, #read the bill.
Thank you. Hey, Cliff, do you think you can follow your wife? You're good? Did she say it all? Okay, I'll mark you off. Bobby Wilson. Okay. Matt McKee had to leave. Did he? Don Morphew. Oh, it is.
Thank you. I'm Don Morphew, and I live at 100 Morphew Road in the ETJ. I'm a proud member of the Garland Good Government Group, and I rise to offer suggestion. The proposed ordinance appears to be nothing more than a rush to circumvent Arkansas law. The proposed ordinance is not needed nor wanted by many people in this area. I've already heard that at least one other organization is planning a petition drive to allow the people to vote rather than just take the city's board position that this law is needed. You may or may not recall that the Garland Good Government Group has successfully led a petition drive to allow the people to vote on whether or not to build a new city hall that was already voted on and approved by the city directors. The public opposed the action of the city board by a vote of 3-1. You may also recall that the Good Government Group worked to defeat a so-called jail tax that the city and the county could use for whatever they pleased, and the tax would never sunset. Of course, the Good Government Group then worked hard to have a proper ordinance and a jail tax passed by the vote of the people with a sunset clause and restrictions that allowed the tax to be used only for jail construction and operation. You may even recall that the Good Government Group is still the only group to have ever successfully petitioned for a referendum to remove a city board director from office.
The people then voted by a huge margin to remove that director from office. With this in mind, may I simply offer this. While the petition for a referendum to overturn the ordinance you're considering tonight is taking place, let us also petition for a resolution to remove board members who are not working in the best interest of the city of Hot Springs and this area's businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Robert Haynes, Haynes, Haness. Okay. See if he's out there. Oliver Driver.
There's no other speakers outside.
None? Okay. Oliver Driver. Is Oliver Driver here? Okay. And no Robert Haynes? Okay. I think that is everybody. Let's see. Don't want to miss anybody. Oh, Wayne Rowland? That's, sorry, almost, the pages are.
Yes, I'm Wayne Rowland at 220 Cooper. I vote no against this ordinance. It is styled as an ordinance against discrimination, which is very admirable, and I might add very idealistic. But when I read the part of the ordinance requiring all city vendors to adopt this policy, it is obvious that this is not an anti-discrimination ordinance at all. It really says we choose to discriminate against one group of people for the benefit of another. Any rational mind understands that what the government takes from one group, it gives to one group, it takes from another, a sum-zero game. This game is played by all kinds of special interest groups with one goal in mind, to get ahead at the expense of those who get in the way. What is styled as an effort to achieve some greater good is in all reality nothing more than a power grab by this special interest group. They want a trump card to play anytime their interest runs into trouble. Their modus operandi is to use the courts to impose their will on the masses. You do have a good city attorney. They parade their idealistic goals out simply to deceive the weak-minded and camouflage their ambition. They use whomever they can to achieve what only they want. They view this council as simply a pawn in their great chess game of ambition. The only reason I'm here is because I care. You might ask, how does this ordinance discriminate against people like me? I'm glad you asked. I believe that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish and have everlasting life. We know him as Jesus Christ our Lord, and there is no other name under heaven by which to be saved. Love Jesus and you will love forever. What are we guilty of? Preaching the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, a gospel that demands faith. You must believe to be saved. You must accept him as Lord, forsaking all other lords. We preach this to everyone, regardless of race, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, or what have you. This is what I preach to my children. This is the crime against humanity that I am guilty of. Under this ordinance, to continue to do business with the city, I will be required to submit to a different Lord. This I cannot do. I refuse to change my deeply held beliefs because the government requires it. This is exactly why the Arkansas Freedom Restoration Act was so necessary. So the real question is this council going to yield to this special interest group and give them the trump card that they want, the dominance they seek over others? Or will you reject this ordinance for the good of the masses? The best way to end discrimination is to stop discriminating. I repeat, the best way to end discrimination is to stop discriminating. Reject this ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, that's it. Okay, now it's time for board members. Do you have discussion?
Well, our next motion would be to suspend the rules and place this on the, nope.
No, we're just discussion and vote.
Discussion? Okay. Well, can I be recognized then?
Yes, you may.
Okay. First of all, a couple of things there's enough been said about this tonight. I would point out that Some local people said that if the board passes this ordinance tonight, that they'll gather signatures to force a referendum on this ordinance. And that is probably likely. However, I would also point out that there is a group gathering signatures to force a referendum on Act 137 at the state level. So the people may get to decide both these issues at the local and state level. But finally, there's a lot I want else to say tonight, but I prayed on this matter this morning. I know that may surprise some of you. But shortly after my prayer this morning to ask for guidance on how I'd vote tonight, I think I received my answer. 10 minutes later, a former student of mine at National Park Community College called me. And she asked me to vote for this ordinance tonight. She is a lesbian. She told me about the discrimination that had taken place against her. And she says, and we remember, I said, well, I was trying to recall the class. I said, we remember that I had you the spring that your sister died, and you taught your class that night after you got the word that your sister had died. I think that was the message that was sent to me, that out of all the calls and contacts I received, that I should vote for this ordinance tonight, and I will vote for this ordinance.
Okay. Do we have discussion? Any questions?
I have a couple of them, if you don't mind. First of all, in the ordinance itself, I would like to just have a clarification on something, if we could. Under Section 1, it says all city departments, divisions, commissions, and offices that contract with vendors shall adopt a written policy that reflects such non-discrimination in contracting. I'm asking as a point of clarification of the city manager. I'm assuming that this policy will be developed at the city level and applicable to all departments, the same policy. So we don't have one policy for the police department, one policy for the fire department, one policy for the sanitation department. This is a centralized policy, and they all will be required to abide by that. Is
Yes,
that
it will
correct?
be a uniform policy.
Thank you. The second question I have of council, and that is Representative Rushing brought up the fact that we did not include some of the federally mandated discrimination or protected classifications. Is there a need for that, or can it be silent because we have to abide by it anyway?
So, some of the protected status it would not fall under the purview of such an ordinance, but even if they did, yes, federal law preempts anything that we may put in place, so we must abide by and adhere to those federal standards, yes.
Okay, thank you, Council.
Yes.
So do we need to correct the language in Section 3?
To what?
To add the age, marital status, religion, creed?
With how we contract?
Yes.
Those items of protection that she mentioned have more to do with employment.
Okay.
We're already under that.
How about pregnancy?
Title VII of Civil Acts, right, of 1964.
Would you explain the executive action that was taken on April the 17th, I believe?
Yeah, that's on the federal level.
Federal level, but would you please?
Executive order. I think it was 13672, which became effective April the 8th of this year, which essentially treats federal contractors the same way that this Section 3 would treat city contractors, stating that they cannot discriminate on basis of gender identity or sexual orientation, and then it goes on to define what those terms mean, and so that would be the kind of definition that we would be following under such an ordinance if the board were to approve.
Would you mind reading those definitions?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Gender identity means refers to one's internal sense of one's own gender. It may or may not correspond to the sex assigned to a person at birth and may or may not be visible to others. Sexual orientation refers to an individual's physical, romantic, and/or emotional attraction to people of the same or opposite gender. Examples of sexual orientations include straight, or heterosexual, close friend, lesbian, gay, or bisexual.
May I ask a question of what this will do with our contract with the Boys Club that we contract with every year? Would they have to accommodate transgender?
They're nonprofit.
That would be covered under Director Foley's amendment.
Not-for-profit.
The nonprofit.
I'd just like to know if we have ever had, since Brian, your tenure here, have we ever had a discrimination case based on the LGBT or any sexual type complaint?
Define case.
Taken to court?
Have I
A complaint?
Have I had to file an answer in court? No.
Okay.
Have you had any behavior that has had to be addressed because of the same classifications acting on an employee?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I would just like to say that I am going to vote for this. All these Christians that stood up here tonight, I just wonder, back in the day, I could not drink at the same fountain you drank out of. I couldn't go in the same restroom that you went in. It had to be colored or white. The water fountain, colored or white. I wonder how many of you Christians says, well, I'm going to drink some of this colored water. I have not heard anything about that. Nobody talked about what happened back in the day when we had to go to the back door to get something to eat because we couldn't sit next to you and eat. Not only is this looking at one part of discrimination, but it's looking at all, Jews have been discriminated against terribly. Blacks started out first, and you're still discriminating against us. You're teaching your children now to be...
Elaine, I'm thinking we're getting a little bit off.
Wait a minute, let me finish. You ask all your questions,
Yeah.
and you got your answers,
All right.
and now this is my turn.
Okay.
Anyway, I can tell, I've worked in the store for 36 years, and I can tell when a child looks at me and says, what color are you? Are you black? Where did that come from? If you love the Lord, you're going to teach your children differently, not to discriminate. Thank you, Mayor. You know, I get to talking sometimes.
I know.
And I can't stop.
You know that also that I'm a Christian, and when you say you Christians, it's kind of offensive to those who are Christians.
Well, I just wanted to know, did you drink colored water?
I
or
did,
the
ma'am.
colored
I
coffee?
have.
That's why I asked.
Yes, and I do not discriminate against colored
I
or
didn't
anyone.
say you.
Yeah, but I'm a Christian, so that offends me that you think it's only Christians doing that.
Well, the Christians, the one came up here tonight and said they were Christians and they were against this. That's what I'm talking
Well,
about.
they're not against discrimination. They're against the way this is discriminating against
now you're speaking
businesses.
for yourself.
No, they spoke for themselves. But I did make a huge discriminating offense to Dan Lewin, and I left you off, and I see that you are here. Would you come just speak for 3 minutes? You were the last one on the list, and I'm sorry. And you don't even have to wait till it's over. You can speak now.
Talking about discrimination.
Yeah.
Christian Jews get to talk too.
He's my favorite Jewish person.
What Elaine is talking about.
Oh,
That's
you're my
really what
second
was on my
Jewish person. Okay.
was on my agenda. You know, Elaine said she couldn't go and drink from the same fountain or eat in the same restaurant. Well, I know about discrimination, probably better than anybody else in this room.
You do.
And it's better to have your own fountain to drink out of than not to be allowed to drink at all. And us Jews in Germany, we weren't allowed to ride, not only ride in the back of the bus, we didn't get to ride in a bus. We didn't get to see a doctor. We didn't get to have medical care or schooling or any kind of dairy products. And we were beat up every time that they catch us. That's discrimination. what you guys are talking about is a choice. Like, for instance, I'm not the best speaker, but the thing is, when I went to school back in the 50s, the guys got together and said, let's go to Philadelphia and roll a queer. That was good. In those days, everybody thought, oh, yeah. I didn't get to go because I had to work on a chicken farm. But the thing is, look how far we have come. And it's not because of some stupid little discrimination agenda there. It's because our hearts have been changed over the years. And we got anti-discrimination laws. And I discriminate when I had my business. If somebody walked in with tattoos all over them, and I don't care how good they weren't going to get hired by me. Discrimination is choice, and choice is freedom. And what you're doing is you're limiting our freedom. Talking about Christians, we don't mind anybody. We hate the sin. We love the sinner. There's no Christian in here that's a real Christian that'll say, I hate a person because of their agenda. My best buddy in the Air Force was a black guy. I know that's everybody says that, but the thing is, I didn't have any homosexual friends because I feel weird around them. But, I choose who I want to associate with. People that like me, they love me. People that don't like me, they hate me. I don't care. You got your freedom to think about me whatever you want to, and I want a freedom too. And getting businesses to sign that they're not going to discriminate, that's stupid. You're lowering yourself to some. There's nobody getting discriminated against anymore. People are getting their feelings hurt, and that's it.
Okay. All right, do we have any more discussion from the board?
Yeah, I love Mr. Lewin, and he knows it.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments, discussion? Okay, would you please call the roll?
Call the roll.
Yes. Ramick.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Carney.
No.
Motion is approved.
Is approved.
Madam Mayor, may I say something? May I be recognized? I'd like to thank you for the way this meeting was conducted with great civility, gave everybody an opportunity to speak. I mean, we can have differences of opinion without being disagreeable.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for that.
Okay, we moved that to take the first position under new business, and we're going to stop for just a minute while everybody that doesn't have to stay for the next. And the next item of business is the consider request for water and sewer connection on Spring Street.
Can we just take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, we're going to take a break.
Oh, okay. A little break.
She was letting know what was up.
And there's nobody signed up.
but we still have to use, because they're working on them, they're remodeling them.
There is a line out there.
At the restroom? You kidding?
There's a couple people
See, at work, they remodeling ours.
Does to me for his discrimination.
Now we having to use the men.
Kept him to last.
And I said, oh, man, and the handicap, they thought it was handicap, is
It was my
not.
only
Because I
control.
went in there, I said,
I
hey.
have no control. item of business, we are back from recess. We are back from recess. Oh. Okay, is it working now? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. And our attorney just left, and he's the only one that can read us through this. Okay. He's coming back. Tell him he's under arrest. Thank you guys for being here, Police Department. You are awesome, wonderful. Hey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did a great job.
Awesome and wonderful.
Yes. Okay, but don't leave us yet. Okay. The next item of business is consideration of a request for water sewer connection at 2876 Spring Street. Is that it?
Yes.
Brought by Mr. Edward Slick. And I think we have someone representing him. Is that you, Mr. Carnahan?
Well, I was just going to
Wait a
introduce it
minute.
quickly and
Well,
then...
wait just a second,
Oh.
unless,
Yeah, we gotta go.
do we have to?
Come back in session?
Read by title only, but there's nothing to read.
there is
I'm
no
looking at you.
resolution
Okay,
there.
there's no resolution. We will have you present that to us now. I was trying to figure out what I'm supposed to say, and nothing is good.
It's new for me, too. Mr. Slick is here and Matthew, his engineer, and they will want to speak and present this to you.
Okay.
But just in quick review, on March 3rd, they completed an application requesting new water and sewer connection at this address. And because it did not meet the current policy, because it was a commercial establishment outside the city limits, on March the 6th, then I denied that request. So then Mr. Slick wrote a letter to me on March 18th, and I think you all have a copy of it, explaining why he would like to appeal that decision. So he's here tonight to do that. The only other thing I was going to mention before he comes is that Mrs. Clark asked me what the difference in cost would be between connecting to the city water and sewer. And I should say there's not an extension required here. There is at this location an existing water and sewer main at the street. So it's just a new connection. There's never been a connection before for that property, so it's a new connection. And so a new water and sewer connection there would be about $3,262, plus they would have to buy a duplex grinder pump station. So altogether, about $8,200, $8,300 is our estimate for that, okay? $8,000 range. To put in a septic tank system and to drill a well, I got an estimate for those, and it would range in the $8,000 to $10,000 range. So we're $8,000 to $10,000 range. It's comparison. So,
And is that our cost or his?
no, that would be
His.
Mr. Slick's cost in either case.
Okay.
So
Madam Mayor, may I ask Mr. Carnahan some questions? Gary, do you have any other applicants that are denied when they have the sewer and main on their property for a connection that are commercial? So
a few.
if-
We keep records of those, and I don't have those with me, but there have been a few of those.
Okay.
Where, that's our policy. If there's not an existing connection there, if it's not a residential use outside the city limits, then I would deny those.
So Mr. Slick is not being treated any differently than you have treated others
No.
under the same circumstances? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did any of the others appeal? They didn't?
No, this is the first person to appeal, and I told him that having had to wait through all of our earlier meeting, he might get the impression that we didn't like people appealing my decision, but I was joking. I was joking, and he laughed. And
We're glad.
So,
We promise.
But Gary, do we know of other denials that might appeal?
no, well, yes and no. I know of another one that I'm going to deny, and I believe they will appeal.
Do they have the
I've
lines
been in
in?
conversation with them,
And so I don't have that application at this time, so I may be speaking a little out of turn, but
Bill, would you like to respond to that?
Well, to follow up, we've had about 20 of these as of March, 10 of those being non-residential. I do know of a couple that have contacted me that I think that maybe watching what happens tonight to make their decision on whether they also appeal. One of those was a daycare daycare facility, and then another we know may be coming down the pike as well. It's a utility.
Thank you.
Do those others have the lines in front of their properties, or would they have to have it run, other than just a connection?
there, I think a short extension would be required at least on one of them. I can't remember.
They'd be small. Out of those 10 I just mentioned, there are some that require a much longer extension. There are some that require a very short extension, and then there are some that have the utilities either across the street or traverse their property. It's just, it doesn't meet our policy.
Okay.
So in all instances, they're treated identically according to the policy and the directives you've been given?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And is there anything else you need to tell us?
No, that's all I
That's
have,
it.
and I think you
Okay.
should hear
Mr.
from the
Slick, would you please come?
I know it's been a long evening for all of you, so I appreciate the time. But basically, we are looking to appeal this decision from Mr. Carnahan. Based on, it's going to be a low water use area, what we're proposing to do. We will bring some jobs to the area with the storage buildings and the businesses that they're going to house there. And it's an existing lot that was in ill repair, and it's going to be upgraded and made to a usable facility. Got Mr. Breckenridge with me here to talk about details. Any
Okay.
questions technically? I'm happy to answer any questions you have also.
And is this your job that you do, or do you have another job, or this will be your income?
This will supplement my income.
A supplement? And it's a storage building, storage unit?
It will be a 60 by 60 building, and it will house a wedding rental business. Then it'll be a 60 by 40 that will house a florist and a caterer, only for their storage of their equipment. There's not any food prep or anything done on site. The one building will have, what we're proposing is to have a small office and a bathroom in it, and that's really what the use for the water is.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Is Randy your wife?
No, that's my sister-in-law, though.
Oh, your sister-in-law?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. It just dawned on me,
Well,
Slick. And,
there's a few Slicks around, and we're all related.
Okay,
so.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Slick, when did you buy this property?
It was in 2013. I'd have to look at the dates. I think I had it written down.
So when you bought this, you knew that the city had a policy of non-connection?
Well, I wasn't necessarily aware of the policy. I knew that there was utilities. It's directly across from the local school that I'm on the school board of. That was one of the reasons for wanting to take the dilapidated buildings down and put something that was viable in the area.
I don't recall the time frames, but did you buy this piece of property or have this piece of property during the 6-month grace period that was offered?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I acquired it after that.
When was the grace period? Do you recall?
Bill, you may recall those dates more. It seems like it was the fall of 13.
It was November through May.
Yeah.
May 1st it
November
ended.
13 to May.
Yeah, of 14.
And did your purchase fall within that time frame?
I'd have to look at the records to tell you the truth. I'm sorry. I can't tell you that. I can't recall that date.
Yeah.
When it fell.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Slick?
April of 13, thank you.
April.
So it did fall.
Application there.
It did fall in that. Okay.
Would you
Thank
like your representative to
Sure,
speak?
sure.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Breckers of BNF Engineering. Mr. Carnahan did a pretty good explanation of what we're looking for as far as utilities with the water and sewer connections versus the well and the septic system. And if you guys have any technical questions, I'll be happy to answer them and try to get you the information you need.
You have any questions?
Are these lines across the street from the property? Would there need to be a street cut or a bore?
Well, the sanitary sewer force main is on the property side, and the 8-inch water main is on the north side of Spring Street, and that will require a service bore, yes, sir.
That's water.
Yes,
Water.
ma'am.
So will you do a pavement cut or bore underneath the road?
Bore underneath the road.
Okay. You probably just said that, and I didn't hear you.
Okay. Bill, did you have something you want to say?
Well, I was just going to state there are some additional properties that we did approve during the abeyance of the 6 month. However, those also had some requirements to have their utilities in and approved by the health department by May 1st of 2015. So some of those that we approved during that time did not meet those requirements. So,
okay.
Any other questions?
Mike, is it time for discussion?
We're discussing.
I thought we'd been discussing.
We've been discussing.
I was just asking
Oh, we got
questions for
to,
information.
what we have to do
I'm
would
sorry.
have to be to take a motion to put it on,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
put it on the agenda.
I'm not
I
sure
mean,
what
put it on-
you would discuss. There's no action on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Breckenridge. I think that may be.
Yeah, what we
There's no
make a
action on the
motion.
floor at this
Yeah.
particular time.
I'm concerned with the, I'm not concerned with the appeal. I'm pleased that people feel they have a right to appeal, but I am concerned that we have given management an instruction with a set of policy that says this is what we want you to follow. And to override the management, that's the reason for my questioning, was to find out if the decisions were arbitrary and capricious, or whether we granted exceptions to some and not others to make sure that people were treated the same. And so I think it's incumbent on us to either change the policy and instructions to management, or to support management's decisions under the rules that we gave them to act. Otherwise, they have nothing to go forward with.
Well,
And
not
so-
everybody appeals.
I'm sorry, pardon me?
Not everybody appeals.
I understand that, but typically if you have an appeal based on your instructions to whether it's a commission or a committee, if there's action that's arbitrary and capricious, that's generally the time you step in. Otherwise, you've pretty well set the rules. And so I hate the precedent that provides others an opportunity to now come before us on an individual basis, which neuters any decision of the management in the utilities. So if we feel strongly about it, then I would like to see us readdress the policy. That's where I'm going with it.
In that policy, is there, I know in some of our policies, it says it will be handled by a case-by-case basis. Was that anywhere in this one?
If I recall the ordinance, it was that it automatically comes to the board if it's over 19 residences or 20 residences, or the volume thereof.
Equivalent units.
Equivalent, yeah. And other than that,
Clause for case-by-case
people do have a right to appeal.
considered?
And I think the right to appeal is important because this board wants to make sure that decisions are not being made arbitrarily or capriciously or discriminatorily. So, did I answer your question, Mayor?
That we couldn't do it case-by-case?
No, no, I didn't say that.
Okay. No, I was trying to figure that out if that was.
It comes to the board directly
Mhm.
if it's 20 or more lots, houses, or equivalents.
Right.
Otherwise, it's handled at the staff level pursuant to the board's direction. That determination was made by Mr. Carnahan using the policy that's adopted, and the applicant is wanting relief from that policy and is coming to you for that relief, which is permitted. I mean, that's exactly what the policy says.
Well, since this is the first appeal since I've been on the board, is it our decision tonight to grant or deny the appeal, or does this go to the next meeting?
Well, for what it's worth, this is the first time we've had an appeal under this policy.
All right. Okay.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
You can entertain a motion for any action that you wish at any time you are convened in business, which you are, or you can ask that it be placed on the next agenda with requested action to be considered.
Well, we have all of the information before us. It's on the agenda right now. So instead of pulling something out that's vital for someone's livelihood or, to know whether to go forward, that would wait 2 more weeks.
I think you're going to get a motion.
Yes, do I have a motion for anything?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we grant this appeal.
Okay.
Second.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second that we grant the appeal. Do we call the roll?
Now you have
Now we
something-
discuss
Now
it.
you have something to discuss.
Now we can discuss more. Is there any further discussion on this? Yes,
Mayor.
ma'am. She has one. Yes.
Wait. No, I had my hand up.
Oh, you did?
Did you have
Okay.
your hand up? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have just a question. Is the business inside the planning area,
Yes, ma'am, it falls within the buffer zone.
in the planning area?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you had,
And my response was such a small, well, with the sewer on his property and the water right across the street 20 feet away, you know, and the small volume he's going to be using, I think that we should certainly approve the appeal.
okay. We have a, yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to clarify something on that abeyance that we had that only addressed residential. This policy's been in effect from the beginning, April of 2012, where we had not done anything outside of residential. I just wanted to give you that clarification because I didn't address that.
Thank you for clarifying that. I now recall. That is correct.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Okay, do we call the roll, please?
Foley,
No.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones. Aye. Clark,
No?
Williams,
Aye.
Ramick,
Aye.
Carney.
Aye,
It's approved.
it's approved. Go and build. Thank you. Okay. The next item of business is to consider ordinance number 01514. An ordinance waiving the requirements of competitive bidding for the purchase of installation. Do I have entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Would you please read by title only?
You have a motion and a second.
Second, to
You did-
suspend the
You need to
rules.
vote on that motion now.
Oh, it's been a long day. Do I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title only?
So move.
And
Second.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no.
There we go.
Okay.
Ordinance 01514, an ordinance waiving the requirements of competitive bidding for the purchase and installation of additional emergency warning sirens from SafetyCom and for other purposes. That concludes your reading. If you now entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
We have a motion to adopt. Do we have a second?
Second.
And discussion. That would be you, Max.
Okay. Max Sestili, City Hot Springs Stormwater Division. We are seeking approval to waive competitive bidding and contract again with SafetyCom, Inc. out of Little Rock. They've been providing us with our equipment and installation for the last 2 years. We've covered the downtown area, Whittington and Park Avenue. We've moved southward on the Central Avenue corridor, and then about a mile east and west from that corridor. This year, we have budgeted enough money to add 2 additional sirens on the western portion of town, which will cover the west side, about Albert Pike, all the way up to the Army Reserve Center, Walmart, that area, and then about down to Twin Points Road. So we're getting a pretty good area of coverage right there. The cost for this year would be $70,523.20. We have budgeted for that. We expect it'll be about 2 or 3 months before we can get those installed if you do approve them.
Okay. Have any questions? There's no one signed up to talk about it. You may discuss. Any questions for Max? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Ramick.
Aye.
Foley. Aye. Carney.
Aye.
Thank
Got
you
it.
all. Have a great night.
Okay.
So it's going to reach my house now, huh?
Yes, sir. You saw the new map?
Thank you very much.
And Brian will be the voice that you hear in the middle of the night. Okay.
I hope
Is that
not.
the last one? Is there another one?
There is another one.
Oh, where did it go? I don't have it.
Agenda 23, ordinance 015.
There it is. Consider ordinance number 015. First of all, we entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a
Third.
second to suspend the rules. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Council, would you please read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance 01515, an ordinance adopting zoning regulations, declaring an emergency and for the purpose. That concludes your reading of the ordinance. Mayor, if you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion with any. Mind you that there is an emergency clause under Section 9, which I'll read in its entirety if a proper motion is received.
Okay, may I have a motion?
I so moved.
And a second.
Second.
And the staff person would be Ms. Selman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is exactly what it says. These are establishing minimum requirements for landing helicopters, particularly personal helicopters, within the city of Hot Springs. On March 20th, we had a gentleman with a personal helicopter who was attempting a landing on a very narrow strip of land that he owned at Bayshore. It's directly adjacent to a residential neighborhood, and in the process of making the landing, the helicopter whirly part did damage to the adjacent neighbor's property. What the FAA says in terms of regulating this type of landing is, number one, the pilot must be in compliance with local regulations, and the pilot must have the permission of the property owner to land on the site. Well, Hot Springs has had no helicopter landing regulations. We did have a section in the code that calls out airports and landing fields as conditional uses, but there was some history of other court action against similar situations in other municipalities in Arkansas that led us to believe that that was inadequate regulation. So in conjunction with our airport director, George Downey, and our city attorneys, Brian Albright and Terry Askew, and relying heavily on a Federal Aviation Administration advisory circular regarding personal landing spots, we have crafted what we think is a minimum regulation to protect the people of Hot Springs from future incidents like the one we had in March. You've got the entire ordinance. Essentially, it establishes that use for heliport, helipad, and helistop as conditional uses in C2, C4, M1, and M2. Those are commercial and industrial zones. Certain rural, residential, and agricultural zones of 5 acres or larger. When residential use or zoning or where educational, assembly, or institutional occupancy is no nearer than 1,000 feet from the perimeter of the proposed area. And also, essentially, that's it. So we are asking that the emergency clause be applied to this and that the regulation be effective immediately upon approval, should you so approve. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. We have no one else to ask us anything other than the board. Do you have discussion, questions? Does this apply to Black Hawk helicopters that fly over in the night in people's neighborhoods? Which they do. Okay. Any questions? Okay, do we do the emergency clause first?
No, you got to vote on it.
And then the emergency clause. Okay. Hearing no further discussion, would you please call the roll?
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Ramick.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye.
Mayor, with your permission, I'll now read the emergency clause, Section 9. It is hereby found and determined that an emergency exists, and this ordinance being immediately necessary for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of its passage and approval. That concludes your reading. If you now entertain a motion second to adopt.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the
I so
emergency
move.
clause? And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. It is adopted.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that it? Please.
I move that we adjourn, man.
Yeah, let's do. Can we skip the comments section, board of
Nobody
directors?
here, please.
Are y'all commented out?
Everybody gone.
We're commented out.
Okay, let's.
Where did Dan go?
I gotta go out and do the
The what? Pretty what, though? Dan didn't sign up. Did anybody sign up for the, they didn't, did they? After? Did they?
Surely not.
They might have.
Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
I did already.
What, do we have
Well,
anybody signed
that.
up? Okay.
Yeah, there was a Dan.
Oh, he's,
We have a motion, a second to adjourn, Mayor.
Dan, do you want to talk again? Can we just go home?
But we have
We
a,
have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, all right.
Somebody else that wants to.
As soon as that goes off,